Hello, everyone. This is Thom Jennings, your host of Music Connects People. This is the podcast that talks about the musicians and the music that brings people together. Today, we have a long-awaited episode. My friend John Pohida asked me to post this interview a long time ago, and I'm just now getting around to it. So I apologize, John, but we're going to go live here, and obviously, you can listen to the archives since I didn't promote the live version of it. But anyhow, it's an interview with Fee Waybill of the Tubes. It is 50 minutes and 17 seconds. I really didn't edit anything out of it except when he received a phone call. There was a bit of silence there in the line. But other than that, this is about as raw and unabridged, unedited, whatever the heck you want to call it, as an interview as you're going to get. I've been a huge fan of Fee Waybill since I was 14, 15 years old. Love the Tubes, first exposed to them during the Tubes in Utopia tour, the Love Bomb POV tour. I met all the guys on that tour. Michael Cotton wasn't with them at the time, but we had this thing where they showed up at a motel in Batavia, New York called the Treadway Inn, which I still drive by on a regular basis. And I'll never forget the tour bus pulling up and all the Tubes just coming off one by one. And the last guy off the bus was Fee. And Fee hung out and talked with us. And then he didn't come down to the hotel bar. But the hotel bar was this nasty old, like, wooden-paneled, smoky, smelly bar. And Chasm Sultan was there, Prairie Prince, Roger Steen. I sat at a table with Chasm and Roger, Steen, and Prairie Prince, and they were just the sweetest guys ever. Vince Welnick was sitting at the bar with my good buddy Chris Oakey talking about a whole bunch of stuff that maybe we'll get into someday. I certainly want to do a Vince Welnick project at some point. I know I talk with Fee about Vince as well, but met Vince later. He used to get me backstage at Todd Rundgren concerts. He played at a club that I worked at in Rochester, New York called the Red Creek Inn, and with the Tubes, and never forgot me after that. It was just a sweet guy. I was able to connect with him when he went into the Grateful Dead, but before he was in the Grateful Dead, if I ran into Vince, he always remembered me, always said hello, and he kind of put up with my craziness at the time. But, back to Fee Waybill. Again, this interview, we talk a lot about the completion backward principle, and those of you that know any of the history of the Tubes know that there was a bit of a push and pull between David Foster as a producer and Todd Rundgren as a producer, and they had very different approaches to production. Foster, of course, being this taskmaster, overdubber, just wanted to make sure everything was perfect to the point where he brought in some additional musicians to record some of the tracks. If you get a chance to read Steve Lukather's autobiography, he talks about, not in great detail, but talks about his work with the Tubes. Fee also talks about Richard Marx, and maybe at some point I'll throw up the Richard Marx interview that I did with him. And it's funny, he talks about Fee in very glowing terms, and those two had a great working relationship as well. But this is a long interview, so I've probably already talked a little bit too much. But because if you're this is one of those ones that, again, if you're a huge Tubes fan, you're probably going to want to sit and digest in chunks and pull some stuff out of it. I did mark it for explicit content because there was some swearing. I don't quite remember if I swore, but when I was going through and cutting out that one section where Fee takes a phone call, I did pick up a swear word that began with the letter F. So if there's any children listening in your car, make sure that you get ready to either explain to them what those words are and what they mean, or just deal with it, I guess. Anyhow, I think that's it. Oh, and one other thing, I had, it's interesting. I met a friend, Adria Tarbell, and maybe if she ever listens to this interview, we met at a Tube show. We met at some Todd Rundgren shows, but then later on we had a pretty cool experience at a Tube show. Adria was a super huge Tubes fan at the time. Hadn't seen her in like 35 years. Just caught her at a Todd Rundgren show in North Tonawanda. It was just great to see her. It's always great to connect with old friends, and that really speaks to the theme of the program, Music Connects People, and why this interview is appropriate for that theme is the Tubes are one of those bands that they have a cult following, and they have a very dedicated fan base and people that love to enjoy them and come together to see them. So Adria is a friend that I picked up along the way because of the Tubes, and of course Vince Welnick, as I mentioned to you, and Mel from Rundgren Radio and I were talking recently. We did a show. It's in the archives. You want to check that out. And she was talking about a guest that she was never able to interview, and Fee was that guest because I don't think he wanted to appear on a show that had the name Rundgren Radio in it. And it's funny because about 2 weeks after that, I had the opportunity to kind of fall in my lap to interview Fee because they were coming to North Tonawanda. And, good stuff. I've interviewed Prairie Prince. I'll probably throw that interview up at some point, but I will let you go ahead and listen to this. As always, I appreciate your comments. Please consider subscribing, sharing, doing all that kind of stuff as long as I can get people to listen. And I'll somehow have to figure out a way to get people to at least subsidize the monthly fee for the podcast hosting on Spreaker. But, again, hopefully this is something that people are able to enjoy. So, now, after way too much chattiness, here is my interview with the legendary Tubes lead singer, former roadie, Mr. Fee Waybill.
Hello.
Yeah, hello. Is this Fee?
This is Fee.
Hey, Fee. It's Thom Jennings. Quite an honor to be able to speak to you today. I really appreciate setting up this interview.
No problem, Tom. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I met you. You probably don't remember it. I was out in Batavia, New York, after a Darien Lake gig when you were on the Tubes and Utopia tour, and everybody came off the bus. It was the night you found out that Capitol had dropped you, and you were the only guy that stopped and talked to me. And it was, they say you shouldn't meet your heroes, but you were very gracious that evening, and I really appreciate that time you gave me many years ago. And I've been a huge fan. I was before, but I have been since, so I do appreciate that.
Well, that was probably not one of our highlights of the tour that day, on the Love Bomb tour. God, it should have been just called the Bomb tour after we got dropped. But what are you going to do? We went on. We made it. I'm still here. Amazingly, what is it? 40 something years. I'm still singing and still, being able to do shows, and I guess we're coming back to North Tonawanda.
Yeah, very excited. It's a great venue, as you know. You've been there before, and I've seen.
Yeah, we were there a year ago, or actually more than a year ago. We were there in the winter. I remember it snowed. When we were there last, it snowed. But yeah, it's a great theater, and that's the perfect theater for us. The perfect theater. It's like, maybe 1,100 seater or something. So every seat is good. There's no pillars or anything like that. You're relaxed, you're seated. There's also alcohol, which also makes it a little more comfortable. And it's a big stage for us. And so it's, better than playing some dark little club that's, a little too hip, So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be really cool.
Well, and if we could get right into it, you're doing the Completion Backward Principle album in its entirety. And,
that's correct.
And I know that's a really, really important album to the history of the Tubes, if you will, because it really marked a shift. I mean, you left A&M, and A&M had rejected an album, and then David Foster comes in and kind of saves the day. And I know you've told the story before, but would you mind repeating the story about when you had to go in the studio and try to sing Amnesia for David Foster and how that made you a better singer?
Oh my God! I mean, it took me 3 days because I had never the album we did before with Todd Rundgren. I mean, Todd's just a different producer. I mean, everybody's different, and if you kind of had a good feeling and a smile on your face, and you didn't quite hit, it wasn't quite perfect. It was okay. It was kind of, that feels pretty good. Okay, let's go on. And okay, but not Foster. No. He is in the Mutt Lange school of perfection, and you've heard those stories about Mutt Lange producing Joe in Def Leppard, and they would work days on just one line, and it's funny because I got a chance to work with Mutt. I'll go back to this, but I sang. Dave Grohl's a friend of mine, and he asked me to sing background vocals on a song on their album, and he said, "We're going to do it with Mutt, and we're going to do it analog." Really? Analog? You can do it analog? No Pro Tools? No digital? No, we're going to do it analog. And I went, with Mutt? Yeah. I went, oh my God, this is going to take a week, and it didn't actually. Taylor and I did it in like an afternoon, with a 48-track analog machine and no digital, no help, no auto-tune, none of that. And I think that, David Foster really did make me a better singer. And, Amnesia was the first song we did on Completion Backward Principle. And we knew right away, Foster was the guy. I mean, we knew when he came up to see us in San Francisco, and I think Amnesia was actually one of the first songs, or Don't Want to Wait Anymore, where we played it to him, and he went, oh, okay, what if you do this? What if you do this? And he kind of inverted a couple of chords, and we did a modulation, and he said, it has to pay off. It has to pay off at the end. And he put in that whole vocal, that whole section of, in Amnesia, that wasn't there before. He put that in, and now that's like the big audience sing-along. I mean, the whole place will sing along with that. And, but it was, like I said, I wasn't used to that kind of thing. And I worked and worked and worked, and we would do like, gosh, 2 or 3 hours. I would sing in the studio with David, and I'd think, okay, well, I got the first verse done, I got the second verse done, let's go on to the chorus. And I said, okay, well, let's go to the chorus now. And he goes, well, okay, let's start over. Let's go back to the first verse. I went, what? I thought I'd get no. He goes, well, you're warmed up now, and so, man, I just sang it over and over and over again. And, but, the next song only took me 2 days to get done. And the song after that maybe only took a day and a half, And by the end of the album, I just thought, God, I can do this. I can pull it. I just had never had so discerning a producer before. Never. Of all the producers we had, Al Cooper, he had other things to think about in the studio. And then the other, Ken Scott, the second producer, Ken Scott never spoke. And we thought, oh, he's Ken Scott, he did the Beatles, this is going to be so great. Well, Ken, we would do it again and again and again and again, and he never would say anything. And we just went, well, Ken, how was that one? And he would say, like, it wasn't perfect. Okay, we do it again. And so, and then the third album, John Anthony, we drove the guy insane. The guy went completely insane, and we were working all night long. We were at the time we were playing 2 shows at the Whiskey A Go-Go every night, and we did this for 3 weeks. We were a big deal in LA at the time, and we'd play 2 shows at the Whiskey A Go-Go, and then we'd show up at the studio, and we'd work from like 2 in the morning till 10. We'd work an 8-hour shift from 2 till 10 a.m. And he got about halfway through the record. He went, okay, we just fried his brain completely. And he ended up just leaving. One day we got to the studio and we went, well, where's David? And they went, oh, well, he left. He went back to England. You're done. I went, oh, so great. And then we had an engineer, Don Wood, who finished the record. And then the next one was a live album. So there's nothing you can do there. and then Todd Rundgren. So I never had a producer like David Foster. I never had a guy who was just going to bust you and bust you and bust you until you finally got it right. And so, you know, we still speak every now and then. David doesn't really produce anymore, but every once in a while he'll do a show. They call him the Hitman. David is the Hitman, and he'll do a concert and invite all of the people who sang all of his hits, you know. And the show is just one hit after another. It's just all hits. And, you know, and he'll have me come in to sing She's a Beauty or sing Talk to You Later. And so it was quite an experience. It was quite an experience. And I think, you know, that song, I mean, the whole Completion Backward Principle album, and I don't really, somebody asked me the other day, they went, well, why now? Why are you doing Completion Backward now? And when was it? 81. Okay, 81. So it was 38 years ago. And first, why? And I don't know why. We'd been talking about it for a while and been talking about it. And we were going to do it last tour, but then we decided at the last minute we were going to do a tribute to Quentin Tarantino and do a whole Pulp Fiction tour, the Mondo Pulp tour, which is what we did last time we were in Tonawanda or Buffalo, whatever that place is. And but I think it's, you know, I personally think it's the best record we ever did. I think it's the best record. I think the next record, Outside Inside, was really great also, and it had a bigger hit on it. She's a Beauty was a bigger hit. It went to number 2, I think, and it was bigger than Don't Want to Wait or Talk to You Later. But it was a little, for my taste, it was a little too slick. It was a little, you know, getting away from it. It was a little slick, and. So, you know, we thought, well, okay, what the heck? Let's do that. Let's get the gray suits out. We went and bought new suits. And let's all get suits, and we'll do it, and we'll do the whole thing. And we never have done this before. Even in 81, when we did the Completion Backward tour, we never did the record in order all the way through. We never did. It was all jumbled up, and, you know, Talk to You Later was probably the encore, and I don't think we even did Let's Make Some Noise. I think this is the first time we've ever done, which is the last song on side B. So this is the first time we've ever done it top to bottom, you know, and I kind of wanted to do it. My suggestion was to do Completion Backward, and I went to the band, you know, and we said, okay, we're going to rehearse, and we're going to do it. I said, what if we did it backwards? Wouldn't that be weird? And start with, and then finish with Talk to You Later, and just do the whole thing backwards. And they all went, no, you're insane. We're not doing that. I said, okay, well, you know, they won't get it. You know, so, okay, let's do it. So Talk to You Later is the first, you know, which has always been the closer of our set. Talk to You Later has been for years the closing song, and now we're opening with Talk to You Later. And then I do a little talk, a little speech that I stole from Stanley Patterson. And so Completion Backward Principle, just for a little background, it was a sales technique, okay? We found this record in a record store, and I don't know what we were doing. Either looking for old albums or something, or it was it was like Rhino Records, it had used albums. I don't know if they have Rhino out there, but I used to always go to the Rhino because they had used albums, and you could find, you know, old classic records that people had turned in, and so we found this record. It was called The Completion Backward Principle, and it had nothing to do with rock and roll. It was a sales technique by this guy, Stanley Patterson, and the idea was that imagination creates reality. And the idea was and this was back when salesmen were going door to door. I mean, this was a record from the 50s, you know, when they were selling Fuller brushes door to door, or Encyclopedia Britannica door to door, or whatever, so the idea was the imagination creates reality. So you imagine the completed sale before you walk up to the door, and that's the completion backward principle. You imagine the completed sale, and then the imagination becomes reality. And so he's got a whole speech on the record about imagination creates reality. And so I kind of opened the show with a snippet of that, and the guy was whacked completely, and we completely stole it from him. And I don't know what, when the album came out, we thought, oh God, Stanley's going to be calling us on the phone. We stole his title, completion backward principle, and we stole his concept, and and we kind of turned it into rock and roll, and kind of made it a parody of corporate rock, corporate record companies, and. But he never did. He never called. Never showed up. So we're probably safe now. I'm pretty sure Stanley's dead and gone. So I don't think we have to worry about although his estate might show up if we get really popular. His grandchild might show up. I'm Stanley's grandchild. You owe me a lot of money. But yeah, so it's been, and I think, like I said, I think it's our most iconic album, and so there's been a lot of press on it, and our managers, we just got a new management company, and they've been, touting it and sending out press releases, and the agent has, and it's got great response. I mean, God, we're working like crazy this year. In fact, we're actually playing Albany later in the year. Is that where you live, Albany? I saw that on your phone.
No, I'm from Albion, which is it's probably about 4.5, 5 hours from Albany.
Oh.
But everybody always calls it, if I call somebody, they always think it's, because Albion is just a weird name of a town, so they always think Albany, because Albion doesn't sound like it goes with New York. But I'm dab smack between Rochester and Buffalo, so I can cover both areas.
Oh, I see. You're between Rochester and Buffalo. Okay, well, so you're up there way in the eastern end of New York. You're, in the frozen north.
Very much so. Yeah, we're just getting our thawing a little bit. And you grew up in the antithesis of the thaw in Arizona, so I'm sure that when you're around this neck of the woods for a winter show, it must be a little bit chilling to the bone, literally.
Well, yeah, we played. I live in L.A., but we played, and it's just now. We've had so much rain this year. It's just flooding and rains and more flooding and, fires and then mudslides. And then, we've had more rain this year than we've had in the last 10 years combined. And so it's just starting to clear out. And this week is actually the first week where there's no rain scheduled since about November. And but we went out, where did we go last month? We went to Manchester, New Hampshire. Man, the high was 8.
Wow.
And it was, and then we went to Providence, Rhode Island, and it was not as cold, but it was cold. I mean, the east is really cold. So hopefully we're talking next. Oh, no. Northtown, we're talking May.
Yeah, you'll be out here in May. By then you'll be able to at least, get some decent weather, and if you like chicken wings, you'll be able to
fine by then.
It
should be fine
without hurting.
It should be fine.
So, I just wanted to touch a little bit more on the album, and my first memory of it was on the Fish and Musician on SCTV. I mean, I remember it as a kid, just really falling in love with that appearance. But the song that I heard of the Tubes first that I really fell in love with, and then my son and I used to literally dance around to it and sing in the living room, was Sushi Girl. And I've read that, like, originally when you completed the album, that there wasn't a single, and then Luther comes in, and, you know, you took the words from your engineer, who was, I think it's Umberto Gatica, if I didn't massacre his name. But they were still looking for a song, and I hear Sushi Girl, and I'm like, to me, that's almost equally as strong as Talk to You Later. And I know Don't Want to Wait Anymore was the first single, which was probably not the greatest choice for first single, even though it's a great song. But
I didn't think so myself. I didn't, but like I said, everybody wanted the corporate ballad. That was the deal. The Journey had just had a huge hit with the corporate ballad, and REO Speedwagon just had a huge hit with the corporate ballad. And I went, no, it's got to be Talk to You Later, and that's why we wrote it as a rock first single. And Foster was against it too. And they went, no, it's got to be Don't Want to Wait Anymore. And I think it went to top 20 or something. And where Talk to You Later was number one on the rock chart. It was number one on practically every other country in the world where it was released. I think 17 countries it went to number one. And so I don't, Capitol Records was one thing after another. Man, they just, it seemed like every week there was a new president. And that whole company just never got it together. They never got it together. When we were gonna, not to change subjects, but after She's a Beauty, we were gonna release Monkey Time, which was a duet with Martha Davis. And Martha and I have been friends for years, and Monkey Time was a great song, and it was a perfect follow-up for Beauty. And then her manager, Val Garay was her manager, and he talked Capitol into shelving it because he was afraid that it would ruin the Motels record coming out 6 months later, and it would, impinge on. I just went, what? That's ridiculous. If it's a hit, it'll only help Martha. It'll help the Motels. It'll help them all. But Capitol bought it. They bought it. They dumped it. They dumped the release and just left us floundering. And but Sushi, actually Sushi is the second song on the record, and I have a good story with John Candy. That when we did that Sushi Girl at the Fish and Musician, we flew up to Edmonton where they filmed SCTV. Right. And we were staying in a hotel in Edmonton, and the producer of the show said, okay, well, we're going to go out to we're going to shoot it at this cabin, this hunting lodge out in the wilderness about an hour away from Edmonton. And they said, the cars will be there at 6 a.m. to pick you up. And we're going to go out and we're going to shoot all day. We're going to get the whole thing done in one day. And I said, okay, great. And so next morning, 6 a.m., the two limos show up, and in one limo is John Candy, and the other limo is empty. And so I went, okay, I'm going with John. And you guys get in the other one, and I was a huge fan of John Candy. And Catherine O'Hara and everybody, SCTV was Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas and everybody. We were huge fans of SCTV. And so I got in the limo with John, and it's 6 o'clock in the morning, and John has got a case of beer, which is about half gone, and a big bag of weed. and he's in the back rolling joints and drinking beer. And I went, okay, this is cool, And so we got completely stoned out of our mind, drank about 8 beers, and we get to the, and I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I gonna remember lines? What's the script gonna say? What are we gonna need to do? And I get there and I went, okay, well, where is it? We have a script? And John went, script? What do you mean? I said, well, no, there's no script. We're just gonna wing it. We're gonna just follow my lead. And I just, okay, whatever you say. And so there was the whole day, there was no script, there was no nothing. We just said whatever came out of our mouths, pretty much. And, we did the fishing thing, and we were pulling up boots and cans and bottles, and then we did the thing inside the cabin with, and they didn't tell us this either. They bring in 40 pounds of fish, gutted trout or something. They go, here you go, and they go, you're going to sing Sushi right here to a track, and there's a big mound of white rice and a gigantic pile of gutted fish. And really? Okay, well, and I'm just gone completely, and I just went, okay, whatever, do whatever, let's do it. What the heck, And that was him. He was just, that was his element. He loved it. It was the best. We had such a great time with him.
Yeah, and that's what made SCTV work. Is there was a certain spontaneity, and I think most of those guys cut their teeth on improv, but Candy was, Candy was just such a, I just love his movies. Just a funny guy, and like you said, SCTV produced so many great people, actors, and went on to great careers, and I think they had an episode 2 of the Plasmatics, which is kind of a crazy band to have on SCTV, but and Joe Walsh had a bunch of different musicians after you guys, but I think you were the first musical act that even appeared on SCTV, and it was a great appearance.
It may have been, I think, and those people are still working. Rick Moranis is still working. I guess I haven't seen it, but I guess Catherine O'Hara has some kind of a series. I don't know if it's on Netflix or what. Somebody told me about the other day, and I wasn't aware of it. I said, I got to watch that. And then I couldn't remember what it was, but and what was the guy's name? What was the tall, kind of geeky guy? What was his name?
Eugene Levy, I think. Is that the one?
Eugene Levy was, he still works like crazy. He probably has worked more than anybody on the thing. But no, the other guy, the tall guy, the guy.
Oh, Joe Flaherty.
Yes, Flaherty, Joe Flaherty. Right. God, it's such a great show. Such a great show.
So, I don't know how much time we have. We've been 26 minutes, which is more than generous. I'm usually lucky to get 10 to 15, so it's quite an honor. But I did want to spend a little time talking about definitely Vince Welnick. I met Vince a few times over the years, just a very sweet guy, but I've heard a lot of crazy stories about him, and that he definitely was dealing with a lot of personal demons and those types of things. And him and Prairie were very close. I've spoken to Prairie a few times. Just wondering, what memories you have with Vince and especially when he sort of parted to the Grateful Dead. And I've read where when he went to the Dead, he sort of forgot his history with the Tubes for a little while, and then after the things didn't work out with him and Bob Weir, he sort of came back into the fold. But we know it all ended very tragically.
Well, yeah, really, really tragically, and and that was upsetting for me because we were close. Vince was the only guy classically trained in our band. Everybody else had taught themselves. I was a singer and an actor, and I had taken vocal lessons and stuff, but Vince could play anything. Roger taught himself to play. Rick taught himself to play. Bill, Prairie. Nobody ever took lessons. But Vince, from the very beginning, Vince was, he was like the leader of the band because, when you were trying to figure out a chord or you're trying to modulate something or you're trying to change the key to some music theory type question, it was always Vince. He was the one who said, this is how it is. It's going to have the blah, blah on top and the minor ninth or whatever. Vince knew all that. And, of course, I didn't know what the hell they were talking about, being a singer. And I'm a terrible guitar player, and I can play chords, but, that's about it. And but no, he was the leader of the band pretty much. Bill was he's credited as founding the band, and which wasn't actually true either, because Bill had his band, Bill had the Beans, and Roger's band was the Red, White, and Blues band, and the bands merged together after Roger fired his bass player, and so the Tubes were kind of a group effort. We kind of all got together, and I was the roadie before that for Roger, and became the background singer, and but Vince was the guy. He was the musical director. He was the one who could play anything, and we'd write a new song, and he was the one that figured out, how the chords would go, how this would go, and it's I kind of lost touch with him. I left the band in like 80. When did I quit? Something like 88. Or 89, something like that. I left, and everybody was, just too involved with drugs, and I was the only straight guy, and I couldn't handle it, and I left, and I moved to L.A., and I kind of lost touch, and then, when he got the gig in the Grateful Dead, they came to town a few times, and I went to see him, and went to see the band, and we hung out, and but I didn't really know what kind of internal politics there were in the band, and I know that, when Jerry OD'd, they kind of, and pretty quickly after that, they kind of dumped Vince out of the band, and I know that was really upsetting for them. And then he went, and then he did his solo group, the Missing Man Formation, and they mostly did old Grateful Dead songs, and I always thought that was weird. I thought, well, God, why don't you throw in a Tubes song here every now and then? But that's what people wanted to hear. The Dead were so big, and that's the way he made that work. The way he could get that booked. And I was okay with that, but the whole thing was very upsetting for me, and I still, it was once again drugs. It was Zoloft. Zoloft was the problem. That's what he was taking, some horrible drug called Zoloft for antidepressant, and that's, it's major. It's a major deal. You just can't stop taking that. You can't just stop. It doesn't work. And so we had a big memorial show for him, which was really great. And everybody got back together and went to San Francisco. And I still talk to his wife. I still talk to Lori all the time, and she, we still. The royalties that the band makes, Vince still shares in that. We've never, of course, that's only right. He was a member, and so I talk to Lori when we get royalty stuff, and the whole thing was just really sad. It was just really sad, and a couple of times, I think it's funny. I think it was like the week before he auditioned for the Grateful Dead, which was 1991. And I had been out of the band for about 4 years. And we all said, well, let's get back together. Everybody's kind of straightened up their act. And so we all got together in San Francisco. And to talk about reuniting the band. This was and Vince was there. And Vince said, well, okay, really cool, yes, but, I have an audition next week with the Grateful Dead, because I guess, I can't remember the keyboard player.
Brent Midland.
Brent Midland, right, had just died. And they were looking for a keyboard player, and he said something, they're gonna audition a couple of guys from San Francisco. And, he goes, so I have an audition. And I went, and we all thought, well, no, that's not, Grateful Dead, you're going to go to, they don't. Anyway, we thought, okay, well, if you don't get the gig, then let's get the Tubes back together. Oh, okay, great. And the next week, he calls up and goes, hey, guys, I got the gig. And we went, really? got the gig? And we went, yeah. Oh, okay, great. Okay, well, forget all about that. Forget all about that reunited thing. Forget about it. We're not doing it. And so I went back to L.A. and that was the end of that, But then, we got back together in, what was it, 94, I think, like 3 years later, we got back together without Bill and Mike. Mike had since moved to New York City, and Bill decided he didn't want to tour anymore, and his health he had a health problem, and so and they had found a new keyboard player, this guy named Gary Cambra, and so we got back together as a 5-man band, and we've been together ever since. So, except for Gary. Gary left a while back. He wanted to go do his own thing. A while back. That was 10 years ago.
Wow, yeah, time flies.
Gary he left 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And, yeah. So, anyway.
Yeah.
So it's a sad story, and it's funny when I usually mention something about it whenever we play. Don't Want to Wait Anymore was the song that Vince and I wrote together, and one of the first songs that Foster rearranged for us and kind of helped put together. And so whenever I do Don't Want to Wait, obviously is in the completion backward set. And so I usually say something about Vince and, dedicate it to him, or say something like, I better not screw this up because I know Vince is watching me, so I can't blow it. And, but yeah, he was one of a kind.
Yeah. Well, what's fascinating, I'm probably one of the few people that you'll speak to that actually saw the band when you weren't in it. And it was, I think Michael wasn't with them, but David Killingsworth, if I remember the name correctly, was singing. He was the guy before you. And, and then I saw you guys, I've seen you guys since you've gotten back together, but I always felt bad for David because it just, your vocals, you talk about David Foster really bringing out your ability to sing, but I mean, you have a pretty high register, and that material is very difficult, and poor David his voice just was not suited for it, even though the band sounded great. And it was tough.
Yeah, I know, it was bad. I mean, I heard a lot of bad reports, and people asking for their money back, and club owners not wanting to hire the band, and and it didn't help our reputation any at all. And he was the original bass player. You probably knew that. He was Roger's, the Red, White, and Blues band, Roger's band. When we moved to San Francisco together, and I was the roadie, David was the bass player. And the 5 of us, they had a manager guy named John Spear, and the 5 of us moved to San Francisco in 1969, the fall of 69, because Prairie Prince had a scholarship to the San Francisco Art Institute. And Roger's band was a local band in Phoenix, and they were pretty well known and were doing fairly well. And but then Prairie got this scholarship to go to the Art Institute, and he was an artist, and he's, guys, I can't pass this up. I can't do it. And so we just went, oh, okay, well, great, let's go. Let's move to San Francisco then. What the hell? And so we did, and and it wasn't. Gosh, David just got. He smoked hash all day, and I don't know what happened to him. Actually, I don't know. He quit going to rehearsal, and the band got more and more upset with him, and there was a number of incidents that were upsetting, and finally Roger just said, dude, we can't do this. You can't do it anymore. You're out of the band. And he moved. That's probably why his voice was no good. He moved to Hawaii and started growing pot. And so he was a pot grower. And, back before it was legal, 100 years ago, and, he smoked pot all the time, every day. He smoked pot all day long. And, and then when I left the band, I don't know where they got the idea to call him up, but they did. They called him up, and he showed up from Hawaii all those years later. You know, he left in 71. So like 17, 18 years later of smoking pot all day long, he shows up and tries to sing. And he used to be a good singer. He was the lead singer of Roger's band. He could sing. He was a good singer. But, you know, smoke pot for 18 years and see what happens, you know. And so, yeah, he couldn't cut it. He couldn't hit the high notes. And which is actually, who knows, you know. Actually, what happened was, I was going to say maybe if he could have hit the high notes, I never would have been in the band, and I never would have come back. But that what happened was a German promoter his name was Henning Torgel, and he was a guy that we had worked for a number of times on European tours in the 80s and late 70s and 80s, and we had gone to Europe, and he was a German guy, and we had worked for him a number of times, and we always did really well in Europe, and we still do. We still play a lot bigger venues over there than we do here. And Henning called up. They had some manager at the time. Can't even remember who it was. But Henning called him up and said, you know, I want to do a European tour. And he had 60 dates, 60 dates that he wanted to offer us. But he said, it's only good if Fee Waybill is in the band. That's the deal. He said, because he knew that I wasn't in the band anymore. He said, if you can get him back in the band, I'll give you this, you know, tour. And it was pretty good money at the time. You know, they weren't making any money because, you know, David couldn't sing, and they couldn't get gigs, and so he had left, and so then they really didn't have a band at all. It was just Roger and Rick and Prairie, and this keyboard player Gary. And, you know, none of them were really a lead singer. And so this guy calls up out of the clear of the sky. And then they called me up. One day Roger calls me up and goes, well, you want to do a 60-show German tour? And and they told me, well, it's only an offer if you're in the band. And I went, oh. And it had been 6 years or so since I had performed.
Wow.
And I was living in LA, and I didn't have a solo band. I was just writing lyrics for people, and I had met Richard Marx, and I was writing lyrics for Richard Marx. And, you know, Richard Marx, his first record was, I think, 89, and he sold 4 million records on his first album. And I had, I think, 4 songs or four lyrics on the song. So, on the album. And so I was just going, hey, you know, dude, I'm doing pretty good here. I'm sitting around waiting for the mailman to bring me a publishing check, and going to the gym and riding my bike and working on my truck, and you know, and then when they said that, I went, you know, God, I think I better do this. I think I better go back to singing. It's been too long, So I did. I turned around and I went back up there, and then we did this tour, and it went great, and that's, you know, that was the beginning of round 2, and we're still in round 2 all these years later. So
yeah, I interviewed Richard, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and he I think he told me you were the godfather of one of his kids, and
all of his kids,
about what a great guy you are. And you know, on some level it's got to be a little bittersweet to think that what you were doing with the Tubes sells 4 million records with Richard Marx, but yet the record companies couldn't figure out a way to get the Tubes to sell 4 million albums, because honestly, I mean, Richard's pop sensibility is, I mean, the Tubes, I don't know. I mean, I don't get it, honestly. I mean, there's a few bands I listen to their material and I go, these guys should have been much bigger. But
yeah, I agree. And it's funny, he was on Capitol too, and I kept saying, well, this record company sucks. They can't, you know. And then he gets on Manhattan, which is a subsidiary of Capitol, and he takes right off and sells, you know, 4 million records. So, but you know, Richard is a great songwriter. He's he's still my best friend. I'm actually working on another solo record. I've done a couple before, and we're working on it. He and I have been working on one for 2 or 3 years, and we're actually working this Thursday and Friday. We're going to go in the studio and do vocals. But he is without a doubt the best singer I've ever worked with. The best. I mean, he's as good as Foster, easily as good as Foster, if not better. In fact, he's in terms of vocal sensibility and in terms of vocal melody, he's better than Foster. The guy's incredible, and I am the godfather to his 3 sons, and Brandon and Lucas and Jesse, and they're all unbelievable. Oh my God. They're all, they write songs that just blow my mind. And they can, Luke can play keyboard and drum. They can all play everything. Jesse's probably the best guitar player. Luke's probably the best keyboard player. But Brandon can play anything. And he's a drummer too. And so it just, it's such a different business these days. It's such a different business, and they're in they write songs on the internet and play their parts over the internet, and and make money on the internet and YouTube and all kinds of ways that we never even thought of, and that didn't exist during our heyday. And but life goes on. I can't complain. I'm still, my voice is still holding up, and we haven't lowered the key to anything, and like so many bands do, and I never had a problem. I've never had a problem with my voice. Never. I've never. Although I had, I used to, if I got overstrained and I started to lose my voice, I used to go to acupuncture. On the road, I'd find some Asian acupuncture guy somewhere in some city and just go in and go, okay, I'm losing my voice. And they'd stick needles right in your throat, right in your vocal cords. And it worked every time. It was amazing. It worked every time. And there's all these different, points on your body that relate to vocals and your throat and I'm thinking, I'm laying there like a pin cushion, and a couple hours with needles in me, and then that night I'm singing like a bird. So it's been I've been really lucky in that respect with my voice.
Absolutely. Well, listen, let me throw one more at you, since you've been incredibly generous. I really, really appreciate this a lot. And Love Bomb, as I told you, I saw you guys when you found out that your record company had dropped you and all that other stuff. And I know that you've had some negative things to say about Love Bomb as an album. But I've always wondered, was it more about the experience of the recording of the album and moving away from Foster and all that stuff that kind of made you dislike it? Because there's some really good material on it. I mean, Feel It, Piece by Piece. I think Stella's a pretty good song. And I know that you clearly don't sing as much on that album as you probably should have. But have you ever revisited it, maybe pulling yourself away from out of the experience of actually being a part of it and tried to listen to it from a fan perspective? Because I don't know, I love the album.
Well, a lot of people do. I think you're right. I think I was tainted from the beginning because I was the one. That was when they decided they didn't want to use Foster. Oh, damn. Hold on. Can you hold on 1 second?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I'm almost done. I have to. This guy's called 3 times now. Hold on 1 second, okay?
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
No worries. No worries.
Okay, so what were we? Where were we?
We're just talking about how maybe your listening of Love was a little tainted because of just the experience around it and all that. Yeah.
Well, I think that I started out with that, that they wanted to dump Foster after we'd had 2 massive hits, and I knew it was a mistake, and I told them not to do it, and they no, we don't want to go, that we're, and everybody was against me, and then that was why I ended up quitting the band. I made an ultimatum, and I said, look, if you guys do this, I'm quitting. So then you're fucked, okay? And I said, everybody's going to drop us because, I was not a huge fan of Todd Rundgren's, and I didn't think that it was going to compare to a Foster record. And it's funny enough, the songs that you mentioned, Feel It, Stella, Piece by Piece, were the songs I sang. Those were the only 3 songs I sang on the record. And Piece by Piece I brought from L.A., which was a record that I didn't use for my solo album. And so, I think you're right. I think I started off on the wrong foot. And then sure enough, the tour started and they dropped us. Then the record didn't do anything. Piece by Piece didn't make it on the charts. And then they dropped us, and the agent drops us, and the management dropped us, and and then what? Then where was I? Then I was stuck with my ultimatum that I'm quitting the band. So I got, oh great, well now you've stuck your foot in it. Nice job, So then I had to leave to save face. I had to leave, but we did Stella. I like Stella. We did that on the last tour. And we've done actually Piece by Piece we're doing on this tour. So we're going to do Piece by Piece there in Buffalo or North Tonawanda.
Yeah, I saw it on the set, so I was real excited about it.
Yeah, and then we have done Night People, which I kind of like because it's kind of disco-y and kind of and what was the other one? The Roger used to do one. Baby's Eyes or Eyes. Roger used to sing Eyes when he would do a song, because sometimes in the set we'll while I'm changing or something or getting ready for Quaalude or something, Roger will do a solo number and do one of his own songs or Eyes or something. Lately he's been doing Show Me a Reason, which is a song we haven't played for a long time either. So yeah, I think that had a lot to do with it. I think I had a bad taste in my mouth, and I just was, I refused to back down. Then I went to L.A. and I did my solo record, and then that didn't go very well. And Capitol didn't want to promote that either. And even though I worked with Foster. So the whole thing just kind of, took a nosedive after that. The whole thing was a major nosedive. And, but, I think in retrospect, it's like, you have to hit the bottom of the barrel to get back up, I mean, ever since we've gone on and we've gotten back together and the band's even better than we ever were. I mean, Prairie is so good, it's ridiculous. Roger just plays guitar all day long. He's so good. And my voice is really held up. And so I think I don't know if I should say it was worth it. Who knows what would have happened? We could have been REO Speedwagon. That's right. not to. I mean, Kevin's a friend of mine, so not to shoot them down at all. But I was. I don't know. It's just the way it went. It's just the way it went. I have to say though, I don't listen to it. I haven't listened to it in years. I haven't actually. I don't think I even have a CD of it. I think I only have vinyl. But I don't know. Maybe we'll do that someday. If we next time we do the outside inside whole album, and then maybe after that we'll do Love Bombers. So we did the last tour. We did a lot of remote control. We did about 6 songs on the Pulp Fiction tour or on the Mondo Pulp tour. We did a whole bunch of remote control and did songs we hadn't prime time and songs we hadn't done for years and years. So we keep trying to reinvent ourselves every year and come up with a new show. And we have to go. Well, every year we got to dig deeper and find some song that we haven't played for 100 years and go, okay, well, we haven't played this one for a long time. And I don't think we ever played Let's Make Some Noise on completion. I don't think we ever played it live ever. I think this is the first time we will have ever played that song live. Because I know we didn't do it on the original Conversion Backward tour. We never did the whole album in order. Never. So it's, first time for everything, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great song. I mean, I think I remember on the Love Bomb tour you were doing Sports Fan, which wasn't even on the original. But those two songs I think are very complimentary. Let's Make Some Noise and Sports Fan. Very, very cool songs. Well, listen, thank you very much. And I'm an REO Speedwagon fan myself, but I just kind of had to chuckle because poor REO. I mean, they're literally playing the same set that I saw them play in '83 in 2019, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, I suppose on some level, if you're making money at it and you're doing well and whatnot, that's okay. But I'm glad you guys are still able to mix it up and dig deep. And if you ever do a Love Bomb tour, maybe I'll get some secondary credit for it. But I think
there you go. Really? Yeah, I was doing this interview once, and the guy told me I should do Love Bomb. So okay. Yeah.
Well,
don't hold your breath.
It would be funny if you listened to it, and I just can't even imagine. I remember that night, as I said, that everybody found out. Everybody was drinking in the bar except for you and Michael Cotton, and but getting upset. And I just can't imagine being on tour with Todd when everything went down, because I mean, it felt like that was. And I'm a huge Todd Rundgren fan, but I felt like it was just a bad business decision, no matter how you look at it.
Yeah, it was. That was a brutal tour for me. It was because I knew. I mean, and we had so many times. I'll never forget. We pulled into, where was it? I think it was Richmond, Virginia, or something. Some big. And we had been playing arenas. We'd been playing like basketball rinks and 15, 20,000 seater type arenas on the tours before that. And then on Love Bomb, they booked us in the same kind of thing. But then the record company dumped us. We had no radio. We had no A&R guy. We had no promotion on the local level by the record company. And so we'd show up to gigs, and the banner would say, "Tubes, canceled." And that would be the first we'd heard of it. We'd drive all this way to fucking Virginia or something. We get to the gig for the sound check, for the load-in, and we're canceled. And that's when we found out that day. And, and then the management bailed. And then, oh, my God, the whole thing was a fucking nightmare. The whole tour was a nightmare. Yeah. And we ended up, owing everybody money. And, it was horrible. The whole thing was horrible.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I saw 2 shows on that tour, and I thought they were phenomenal. They were just, musically, they were just off the charts. Great. It definitely didn't suffer any quality there.
We still had Kenny Ortega then, and we still put together a big show, and, we would never sacrifice our art, for the sake of bad record sales or bad support from the record company. We didn't care. We were still going to put on the most outrageous show we could come up with, with our choreographer and everybody. And we still had we had the lighting and the sound and the video and everything. We didn't cut back one bit.
Yeah.
And then we realized at the end of the tour, you didn't cut back anything, but then again, you didn't make anything either because nobody came. And so now you owe the world a fortune, and you can't even quit. I couldn't even quit because I owed him. They said, well, they're just going to sue you for the money. You want to have I went, oh, great. Okay, so. And then, so I had to take over. When that tour ended, we fired everyone. I fired everybody, the whole crew, the dancers, everybody. And we went out, and for a year and a half, we played clubs with just the band, with no costumes, no choreographer, no nothing. And it was just the band and me. And I took every dime and put together and kept putting together money and to pay off all of the debts from that tour. It took a year and a half to pay that tour off. And everyone hated me, and I, gave the band a little bit of money, but I would take the majority of the money and go, okay, well, we owe you this much money. Here, I'll give you half. Are you, because that's all I have. Okay, fine. And so we cleared the slate. We paid everybody we owed money to. We didn't walk away and just, say, sorry, fuck you, we're done. I paid everyone. And I'm really proud of that, because I don't ever want to do that. I don't want ever want somebody coming back to me going, "Hey man, well, I had you here and you never paid me," or whatever. But we paid everyone off, and at the end of a year and a half or 2 years later, I just went, okay, we're paid off. Everything's good. I'm leaving. See ya. You can have my shit. You can have my gear. You can have you can have everything. I'm walking out the door. I'm done. And it was very sad. I was a very sad person. And went, slinked away to Slink? Is that a word? Or slunk? I slunk away to L.A. And, I didn't even have, I moved in with my girlfriend because I couldn't even afford a place.
Wow.
But at least I had at least I knew that I had done all I could do, and I had paid everybody, and nobody was on my case, And so, but like I said, you hit the bottom, and then it's all up from there. And then I started writing, and I started working, and I started taking acting lessons, and writing songs with Richard, and we were, we kept trying to play songs with other people, and finally goes, fuck this. I'm gonna sing these songs. I'm gonna get myself a record deal, and these songs are too good to hand off to somebody else. And I went, yeah, okay, that's a good idea. We'll do that. And then, sure enough, 3 years later, he's selling millions and still selling millions. So,
yeah. Well,
anyway, what are you going to do?
It's definitely a happy ending. So, I mean,
yeah, for sure. It'll be a great show. This show's been going so well, and it's so funny, and it just looks really good. And we do, besides completion, then after we do those 10 songs, then we do all of our other classic songs. We do Bondage and What Do You Want From Life and Out of the Business and White Punks on Dope and She's a Beauty and, all of those other songs. It's about a 2-hour show, or if not more. So we do everything, we do it all. That's one of our lines. We do it all. We're here because you're there.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Well, again, thank you so much. I can't wait.
Okay, man.
Love the album. I love all the Tubes albums. I really do. It's all great stuff, and I'm very excited. And
okay, good. Well, thank you.
All right, Fee, and I'll send you off the feature when it's ready and all that kind of good stuff, and maybe we'll get a chance to shake hands at the show.
Good. Sounds good.
All right, thanks so much.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, man. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. Very, very nice. As I said, cool. Next time you see Richard Marx, tell him that he's a solid guy, man. He had a lot of great things to say about you. I'm sure.
I know, man. He's the best. He's the best. He's my best friend.
Yeah.
We still are so close. We talk almost every day. So he lives out here now. He lives in Malibu. So And so, we're still very, very close.
Well, good. Well, maybe you guys should go out on a tour together someday. Just do your solo stuff. And do this stuff with
that's
Richard.
A good idea. We've played with him a couple of times. The Tubes have opened for him. We did it in, Westbury Music Center or somewhere in New York. We've done it a few times, and it's kind of he's got all these kind of mothers that love his ballads. These moms. It's not really our audience, but somehow it works. It's a good combo.
Yeah, great music's great music. So, it always works.
Yeah, exactly, man. Okay, well, take care of yourself.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Okay. I appreciate it.
Okay, man. Take care. Bye.
Well, there you have it. You probably were wondering if I was still alive. That's a long interview. Now you can appreciate what it's like to try to have a phone conversation with me. As you can see, Fee and I said goodbye about 7 or 8 times and kind of went back and forth. But, man, what a great interview. I mean, I said if you're a Tubes fan, I hope you, like if you're a real Tubes fan, you could probably sit back and listen to that whole thing and really get a great insight into what happened with the band, the split up, where Fee's mindset was. And I did, it's funny, I was listening back and I feel like I crapped on REO Speedwagon a little bit. And I want to sort of backtrack on that. REO Speedwagon is still a great band. I mean, they're even though they're playing the same set they've been playing for years. I mean, they're killing it. Very different band without Gary Richrath, of course, and I certainly miss those guys. But I was just kind of saying that maybe it's tough for them on a musical standpoint to not have been able to maybe put out some more new material and kind of be stuck in that REO Speedwagon High Infidelity era. But who knows? Maybe if you're a Tubes fan, you don't even know who REO Speedwagon is, but I doubt that. Anyhow, hope you enjoyed this. As I said, I've finally figured out how to broadcast live on Spreaker, so I'm able to kind of dig through the archives, and these episodes are a little more lo-fi than some of the ones that I was doing before, but I think that content is content. It's kind of like I grew up in the Grateful Dead era, and people love those audience tapes, even though they weren't the most perfect sound. But if you're interested in the content's good, then it's all good. And if you've made it this far, thank you so much. Please help me grow this podcast. I'm going to start just pounding out some material. I think I got some more Tubes archive stuff. Prairie Prince is in the hopper, and just lots of stuff. I've got a Denny Lane interview coming up. I may put that up later today or later this week. Eric Johnson. I've got a ton of stuff. And, of course, if you want to get on the show, if you're a musician or you know a musician, that might be good to just kind of sit in and we'll record an interview and put it up. By all means, have them get in touch with me. All right. Well, that's it. And this is a record of my podcast. I think this one actually is longer than the last 3 or 4 that I've done combined. So I've put out a lot of material in the last week, and I'll finish by saying thank you very much, and I hope you're able to enjoy some good times with some good friends and some great music.